So live on JoyNews today. Let's go back to our earlier story and speak with Colonel Festus Abwaje, retired, on the enforcement of the No Mask Directive. Colonel, how well do you think this can be enforced?
Well, it is enforceable, depending on how we contextualize the word enforcement. To start with, I think this new paradigm of enforcement is going to be a challenge, simply because the law enforcement agencies or security agencies have not been very consistent in ensuring compliance with the restrictions and the lockdowns and so on. It looks like we relaxed the enforcement regime, and all of a sudden from yesterday, because the president says it is mandatory, now we need to start all over again. The law enforcement agencies or security agencies need to show massive deployment. They need to deploy very widely, especially in areas where there are heightened human activities. So the lorry stations and the markets and the malls, specifically in terms of geography, areas like KJTI in Kumasi and let's say the Circle in Accra and so on and so forth. You know, if we don't take the decision now that we need to be resolute in enforcing the measures, it's very obvious that this virus, which is now gaining momentum in its community or communal or horizontal spread, is going to gain the upper hand. But having said that, I've always been very careful to explain that enforcement doesn't necessarily mean using brutal force or maximum force. Enforcement has to be in the context of humanitarian operations or humanitarian action, where a mixture of persuasion, a mixture of threats, a mixture of some degree of restriction of movement and so on, you know, can get the Ghanaian population to understand that it is in our own interest that we comply with the government directive.
Okay. We saw some abuses, or at least allegations of abuse, when the lockdown directive was being enforced. How do you think we can avoid such occurrences this time around?
Well, once again, we've been talking about the need for education, the need for sensitization. But education and sensitization are moral suasion. Unless you couple that with a degree of compulsion, you can be sure that as citizens, for a different set of reasons for each individual, we may not comply. So the presence of the security forces, police officers in uniform, security personnel in uniform, city guards in uniform, especially in their combined nature, might help. If their presence is felt all over the places, and I'm not saying that we can put a police officer or a soldier in front of every single door, but if every so many meters that one walks, or every mile, you come across these law enforcement agencies imposing restrictions on persons who are not complying, then it becomes an inconvenience for persons who are not wearing the mask, you know, to try and violate the restrictions. Again, I think we've been saying, when I say we, I mean all of us who have been part of this discourse, that the law enforcement agencies alone cannot enforce it. The local authorities, whether it is the zones or the units or the local assemblies and so on, and in terms of, let's say, lorry parks, lorry stations, the executives of the unions, for instance, all of them, market queens and whatever, all of them must be part of this enforcement action.
Right, thank you so much.
You can approach the enforcement from two ends. One that is, you know, motivated from the ground by the individuals and the communities or associations that they belong to. And then on the other hand, by the law enforcement or security agencies.
Right. Thank you so much, Colonel Festus Abwaje, for joining us this afternoon.